We're really excited to have Isabel and Carlos joining us today to share their real estate journey. Isabel and Carlos, welcome.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having us.
So would you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you started investing in real estate?
Mhm.
Sure. So I'm a pediatric physical therapist, and I specialize in working with babies in Seattle at Seattle Children's. And
Yeah, and I'm Carlos. I'm a vascular surgeon, also in practice here in Seattle. Last year during COVID, I took a White Coat Investor course that included the conference, and Letty gave a talk there about real estate investing, and I got really interested. So we took the mini course together, and we talked about it. We read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and this the rest, as they say, is history. So we signed up for the Zero to Freedom course, and towards the end of the course, we had found a long-term rental. So that was our first purchase, a triplex in Spokane, a market that you guys know very well, in Eastern Washington. So that's how we got started. That initial property had kind of a low COC, but that's because rents were under market. It had a lot of hidden value in terms of forced appreciation potential. However, because of the eviction moratorium, we weren't able to make the changes that we wanted to make. So we had to figure out a different strategy. So we decided to pivot towards short-term rentals.
So before taking the course, did you have any real estate experience at all?
Not really, and not on purpose. I remember when I was a resident, we did have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment that we used to sublet. So I guess in a way we were kind of house hacking. Then when I was a fellow in Southern California and Isabel went to Washington to do her neonatal PT fellowship, we sublet one of our rooms. So, but other than that, we had no other sort of real estate experience.
yeah, we had previously looked into it a little bit when he was doing fellowship and residency in Palo Alto, but the prices in the Bay Area were way above our means on a residence or fellow's salary, and we weren't quite sure where we would land. And so we had actually looked into it a little bit to see if there would be a possibility that we could buy a house before we had our first baby and then rent it when we went to fellowship, but the numbers just didn't work out for us then.
What was it about real estate that interested you?
I think what interested me initially was sort of that whole concept of having the assets and the liabilities, right? And having something that's going to make something that's actually going to provide an income. And for us, actually became very interesting, especially during the pandemic. I'm sure it's a very common story among a lot of doctors where suddenly your salaries were being cut in half or your hours were being restricted. And suddenly, even though you thought you had all this great money coming in from quote unquote being a doctor, suddenly your income would dry up. So having another source of income made a lot of sense. I learned a lot about other types of investing, investing in the stock market and things like this. But the real estate part actually made a lot more sense in terms of having cash flow and then having an asset that over time you're getting the debt pay down, but you're also getting appreciation. So I think that just made perfect sense for us. And honestly, one of the things I really like about real estate is that I feel like real estate is like this great equalizer. Real estate doesn't care where you went to school, doesn't care about your grades. Real estate is there for the taking. And as long as you do the work, you analyze your deals properly, and then you just go for it, I think success will follow. And that's what I really like about it.
Did you guys have any reservations when you started out? Were you worried, scared, or you knew you were going gung-ho?
We're both pretty cautious people. So it's kind of funny that we decided like, hey, we're just going to do this. We're going to go into this unknown. So it's pretty interesting, shooting back and forth, different listings that we would find and doing the COC and just thinking, are we really doing this? And then driving up to see this property and taking all the kids in the car and driving over to Spokane to do the inspection. And it's interesting. And now that we're doing short-term rentals, he doesn't even blink or think twice when I'm like, oh, I just bought this while you were in the OR. Hope that's okay, honey. So it is, I think our risk tolerance for real estate has changed a lot over the last 6 months.
Yeah, and I think the way I look at it as well is it's not we're just like jumping in and like putting $50,000 on Dogecoin, right? We're using an investment vehicle that is tried and tested. Real estate has been going on in humanity for thousands of years, right? So it's nothing new, and people like you guys have really shown us how it's done. It's not like we're just going willy-nilly buying stuff up, right? There is a process. So as long as there's a process, you go through the different steps, and then you also see other people having kind of sharing their experience, and then you realize you can do this. So I think it's similar for both of us, where if there is a road that's actually been sort of plowed before us, following it makes sense. So that's why initially, yes, there was some trepidation, but now, because it makes so much sense, that's how we were able to take that step.
Talk to us about going from long-term rentals to short-term rentals and the decision and the thinking behind that.
So we were actually got interested because we wanted a vacation place for ourselves. And so we started looking at different areas in Seattle and learning more about short-term rentals and finding out that there is actually possibility to make money while owning a short-term rental. So then we started crunching numbers, trying to figure out some rules and regulations in Seattle and the surrounding area. We were really inspired when we heard about your short-term rental, and that kind of, helped us to focus our search area. So when I saw the property that came up on Gold Bar, we were wine tasting in Woodinville, and I said, Carlos, let's buy this property. And he was like, okay, that sounds good. So we were able to lock it up, I think 4 hours after it came on the MLS, before inspection, before anything. And they were expecting that they were going to have a lot of offers, but they just accepted our offer. So that was really great. And we went up there and it checked all the boxes of what we were looking for. So that really worked out for us.
That is such a cool story, because you locked it up within 4 hours. And, that was probably, they were selling it as a primary residence. I'm sure they didn't expect investors to come out of the blue and be like, hey, I'll take it without seeing it 4 hours after it's listed. We tried to do the same thing with ours, which, is just a couple miles down the road from you guys. We called and we're like ready to lock it up. And they're like, we're not letting you put an offer in until you see it. So it was just like a totally different approach of that real estate agent. But, by acting quickly, you got it off market and you weren't in a bidding war, whereas we were in a bidding war with 7 other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it certainly helped that our agent, even though she's more of a residential primary home agent, was very aggressive and said, okay, I'm going to reduce my commission by X number percent. And, certainly made our offer out of the 3 offers that they had at that time, the most appealing. And then, they said yes.
Wow.
Yeah. But when you did, it's funny because I remember we were still driving in the car when Isabel found a listing on Redfin, because Isabel and Redfin had become very close friends. She said, I found this property. And I said, the first thing, I'm still driving. I said, just make sure that the HOA allows for short-term rentals. And then, let's give it a go. And then, it took us some time to get it ready, though, because we didn't have the other parts in place in terms of like already having a contractor and exactly knowing what we needed. But, it took a few months, but once we got it listed, it's a very, very popular area. It's close to the mountains, it's close to the water, it's close to great hiking. So it has a lot of appeal. And I think the one thing that really resonated with me, and this is what kind of resonates with me in terms of all short-term rentals, is that when we go there, or when we used to go there, because now we can't stay at our own place because it's rented out. The kids love it. You can really relax there. And then it makes me think about when you go on vacation, right? When you go on vacation, you finally, quote unquote, get a break from work and you can finally relax, spend time with your loved ones. So for us to be able to provide that experience for other people is fantastic, because, as healthcare professionals, as a doctor, I'm used to only seeing people at their worst. They're in pain, they're giving a terrible diagnosis. So you're always surrounded by all this sort of negativity. Whereas in the short-term rental, it's the complete opposite. So it actually makes me really, really happy, to see that there's interest, that there's people, families staying over at our place. And that's why we really enjoy the sort of the short-term aspect of it.
Awesome. Yeah, you're helping people create memories,
Mhm.
which is really rewarding. Awesome. And so we haven't been able to stay at ours either, actually. It's been fully booked all summer. So, but I want to talk about managing the property. So I understand that you guys are self-managing this property. Is that right?
Mhm.
Can you
Yeah.
talk to us about the how that's been going?
Mhm.
Sure. So we were lucky in being able to find some like boots on the ground. We have a cleaner that actually lives within the same community a few blocks away. And her son happens to be very handy. So he helped us do a lot of the things that we needed to get set up. So he's basically our local handyman, I would say. He helped us paint, put together some of the furniture with I did as well. And so that was helpful. And our cleaner will go and do little things. So if there's an issue that needs to be addressed right away, she'll go and help out with that. So that's been really great. It was a learning curve in the beginning to get all the questions on Airbnb, know how to answer them, make sure I was responding. We're in the process now, since we have increased the numbers of short-term rentals, that we have to try to make things more automatic. So sending out emails that are more automatic and things, getting more processes in place. So now we're using different software. We're also using dynamic pricing software and some other things to streamline. It helped to have our first short-term rental be local, so I could really see what it took to manage and see what it took to furnish and do all those pieces. So that gave me a better framework of knowing that I could do it in another state. Um, yeah, so that's what we're doing. And the same with Alabama, we have a team there on the ground. We have a cleaning team. We have a handyman. We actually have like a backup handyman. Our agent has been really great in connecting us with other homeowners that he's sold homes to in the same community. So I've sent messages to some of the other owners, like, what are you guys doing about this? Or this came up. Do you have a suggestion? So I think just having a community of other people that are doing the same things that I can bounce ideas back and forth with and get answers to questions has been really helpful in allowing me to manage. I will say that the time commitment, sometimes it's nothing, maybe a few minutes a day. Sometimes it takes a lot longer, like for example, a toilet got clogged. The people wanted to know when someone was going to come. This was in our property in Seattle or in Gold Bar. So I needed to call the plumber, coordinate when they could come, make sure it was okay with the guests that were staying. So things like that, where it might be a little bit faster or not as big of an issue when you have a long-term renter that can either call the plumber themselves or wait a little bit. It becomes a little bit more time sensitive and you have to deal with that, and takes a little bit longer because there's more steps and things to get done.
So you guys started out with a long-term rental triplex in Spokane. Then you bought this short-term rental fairly locally. It's about an hour away from where we live. And now you're mentioning Alabama, and I think you have another short-term rental. So can you talk us through what happened to add more short-term rentals across the country?
We started looking into what other markets people were going into for short-term rentals. And what Isabel said about, figuring out what the processes are, to set yourself up for success, we already kind of had an idea of what that meant. So looking around, seeing, for example, what other members in the community, the empire builders, were doing, you start noticing patterns, right? Where people are investing. For example, places like Gulf Shores in Alabama, or Destin in Florida, Palm Desert, or even in the Smokies in Tennessee, which, by the way, is the other place where we're going to be investing, or we're in the middle of getting some properties there. So we noted that, and that's how we got started looking. And in fact, I remember Isabel found a property in Destin, Florida, that we really liked. We submitted an offer that got accepted. We locked it up pretty quickly. Then she went out there to check it out during inspection, and it just it was not the right place for us. It was not safe. It had a few issues, so we pulled out, and kept looking. But once we had sort of our defined criteria, this is exactly what we're looking for. We found another property in Gulf Shores that we really liked, like a duplex short-term rental place. submitted an offer there, did not get accepted. And then we found this most recent one where, it met all the requirements. We locked it up pretty quickly. And that was an interesting lesson in adaptability that we had to learn, because we had our closing date. And this time we didn't want to make the mistake of like, well, we'll start ordering stuff, we'll get it ready afterwards. No, we wanted to get it, ready and set to go as soon as possible, because we're in the middle of summer, right? So we had our closing date. Then something happened with the loan officer or somebody else or the appraisal, and they changed the date. They pushed it back a week. Meanwhile, Isabel already had plane tickets. We had arranged our au pair schedule so she could help me, because I'm a surgeon. It's not like I have a 9-to-5 job, right? And also, she actually had her best friend who lives in Sacramento fly out with her to help her get everything set up. So everything had to be pushed back a week. Well, everything got pushed back a week, right? So she's supposed to leave on Sunday night or Monday night. And that's when the heat waves hit Seattle. There were all these delays in her flight. So she had to leave a day later. So she actually landed there on Tuesday. I had to sign a power of attorney so she could sign the closing documents for us. So she gets there Tuesday, gets as much work done as possible for the next few days, flies back on Sunday. First renter comes in on Tuesday.
Wow.
So within that 1 week, she was able to kind of get everything kind of set up. And because she's the smarter half of this team, by the way, she's prepared, right? So she starts going through all the drawers, gets a bunch of like the little business cards on who to call for this, who to call for that. So she's creating her own little Rolodex of information there. So if anything comes up, we'll be ready. Gets the handyman to come in, gets everything, all the furniture in. Because the furniture that's there is, even though it's turned as it was sold as turnkey, it really wasn't. We had to get rid of all the furniture because this is furniture that had been used for years, and no one had replaced a mattress. Right? You lift the sheet and you're like, oh, that's not a natural color. So everything got taken away. But she made it work, right? And again, adaptability, number one. It really helped to have a very, very strong why. This is why we do this, and also having your support system. I'm here with the kids, kind of helping out, doing things, and also being the cheerleader, because I really can't do anything else being so far away, maybe providing a few ideas. Then the other thing that worked out beautifully was that we gave all our furniture for that house out for free. So this one family came over, picked everything up. They took it, put it in their truck, took it away, which obviously was a big help for us. And then when we were down to like only a couple of days to finally get the rest of the stuff ready, Isabel reached out to them and they said, hey, we'll come over and help you build the rest of it.
So they helped me hang pictures and make beds and do some other things, so because they were so thankful that I'd basically given them this whole house worth of furniture.
Wow.
Wow.
It was a really cool story. And she was a really interesting lady. They actually buy wholesale auction land and resell it on the internet. So it's just funny the connections you'll make and how the world works if you put out your intention. And I just asked for help. I said the worst they could say is no, but they were so happy to come and to help, and it really helped me get the things done, because I was really under the wire of just needing to finish because I was physically flying out. So yes. And then I think back to the question too, the thing that I really wanted to say about kind of choosing the market, because you asked how we got into Alabama. We did really similar to what you guys teach people to do when they're thinking about cities to invest in for long-term rentals, of just learning the market, figuring out what the return on investment can be. I didn't even know where Gulf Shores, Alabama was. I didn't know about Destin, Florida. But when I saw the return on investments that people were getting, it was mind-blowing, I want to say, because I didn't realize that with the amount of money that you could put in, how much you could get back. So it probably would obviously have not been my first choice, because people say pick a place of where you would want to go to vacation. So we looked into Hawaii. We looked into some of the more obvious locations. We looked into California because that's where my family is. But then at the end of the day, what I told Carlos is, with the return on investment that we'll make from these properties, we can go to Hawaii and stay wherever we want to stay. We can fly down to Mexico. We can, take a vacation to San Diego. and it won't matter because our investments are helping us to fund these vacations and go to these places that we want to go to.
That's truly out of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
what he says. He buys his rentals and then that buys his car payment. And that's what you guys are doing. Your short-term rentals are your vacation payments. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then how are those two performing? Because you had mentioned that these two properties they're all up and running now. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the property in Gold Bar has been live since April, and it's being, it's been doing fairly well. And the property in Gulf Shores, it's almost fully booked for the month of July. And Isabel sent me a little snapshot of screenshot of the Airbnb site that tells you how much money you're making this month. And it's very close to my gross income as a surgeon, and that's without, really having the whole, picture of the entire summer, kind of going through it. Of course, we still have to figure out what we're going to do for the winter months when we want to do it more as a longer term rather than short term rental. But it's just impressive that, you suddenly have these two properties that suddenly can do that, because then that plays into, how much more or how much harder do I need to do, work at work, right? And for example, Isabel is now transitioning from a part-time role at her job to a per diem role, so now she can cut back a few hours at work and, spend more time working on our business. And, it also gives me the freedom to say, listen, I don't really have to, keep doing this for 40 more years, right? I can really decide, make the choices on what I want to do with my career and have the ability to choose.
And the tax savings. We haven't even mentioned the tax savings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny. I was trying to look at what our COC was for Gold Bar, and we didn't get started for months, right? So we have all these holding costs. I had all the holding costs for the mortgage, insurance, all that stuff, and our COC comes to about 33%, and that's without the tax savings.
Wow, amazing.
So for Gold Bar in the summer, we've been at almost 80% occupancy. And like Carlos said, we went live with Gulf Shores in about 1 or 2 days after I left. And I think the whole month of July minus 2 days were rented in the first week of August. So it's been pretty great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But of course, with all the little hiccups along the way, we talked about the dates changing. Then of course, we're so happy, like all high fives around getting the Gulf Shores property live. And then suddenly we get a call from the person staying there saying, oh, the air conditioner doesn't work on the second floor. But Isabel already had the contact for the air conditioning company and they went out there,
at 10 p.m. and
10 p.m.
fixed it. And it was like, they had a 24-hour air conditioning maintenance person and he knew the property, had been out there before and just went out and fixed it. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Great job. And from a distance.
Yeah, from a distance. Exactly.
Wow. That's
Wild.
awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Tennessee, because I know there's a huge group of you guys investing in Tennessee. In fact, we were talking to somebody a little bit earlier in one of the other interviews, and she was saying you're actually moving the market at this point because there are so many of you in that market. You have all the contacts. You can start to change things around there. So tell us about what's going on in Tennessee.
Yeah, so it is really interesting. I'm super excited. We started looking at some different Facebook groups and different people that were investing and found out that it's a really hot market. There's, I think, over 10 million people that are traveling to the Smoky Mountains every year. People go to Dollywood, all these places again that I didn't really even knew existed. Supposedly it's like the little Vegas in the middle of the country. So we started looking and there's kind of this sweet spot where if you can do a 3 or 4 bedroom, and if you have a pool access or a pool cabin, your numbers just shoot through the roof. So an opportunity came up for a new build, which would be a 4 bedroom with the pool like on the bottom floor. And I just told Carlos, like, we have to jump on this. Like, this is going to be a moneymaker. So let's do this. So we were able to do that. Because of the way that it's set up, we didn't actually have to get a new construction loan. We just put down a deposit, and then when it's completed, we'll be just doing a conventional loan for that. So in the interim, we were excited. I was doing all this research about Tennessee, and I told Carlos, like, hey, let's just 1031 Spokane into a cabinet in Tennessee. And at first he kind of laughed about it, and we, talked about it, went back and forth. And then I was like, no, I think we should really do this. So we started looking into the possibility and figured out that that was probably going to be a good choice for us, because we came to a fork in the road where one of our tenants was moving out. And so the decision was, do we remodel and, do the traditional burr on this Spokane, or do we leave that appreciation and that ability to change it up to the next person that buys it? So we decided that we would just let those people do that and take what the offer that made the most sense. And that's really allowed us to propel our short-term rental business, I want to say, and properties a lot this year.
Yeah, but what's interesting too, right? This is what happens when you have a very close relationship with Redfin on your phone, right? She found this property on Redfin, and you look at the pictures. It's like you see like a hammer and some wood, and it's actually a house that's almost finished, right? So it's a new build in this little like community, and the person that owns the community, because we found out about that later through our agent there. Has been developing these little cabins. And so, if because I occasionally go through Redfin myself, right? I would have just blown over like, oh, what's that? A piece of wood? I don't care about that. But she actually read the listing, and she's like, she found it. And I was doing a case. I was doing an angiogram in the cath lab, and suddenly she starts calling. And the nurse picks up the phone. Oh, I'll just call her later, because I'm operating. And then I get a message. I look at my phone. It says, putting an offer on this cabin in the Smokies. Call me for details. I'm like, oh, there we go. So that's, you found that place. And that's what we're going to do with our Spokane property. We're going to do a 1031 exchange. It's a higher value property. And, it's in a very nice spot.
And we're really excited. And the piece that he doesn't know is we have an agent that we're working with that helped us with this new build. So I sent her the text message from Redfin, uploaded it. What do you think about this? And she was like, I don't know how you found this. I don't know how it's still on the market. This is amazing. We have to buy this. Put it in the offer, and I'm going to go check it out for you in the next day or two. So she went with her husband like 2 days later and did a video tour. And she was like, this is amazing that it didn't get snapped up. This is a really great find, because the challenge, or I think what's happening in the Smokies, there's a lot of 2 bedrooms, there's a lot of 1 bedrooms. It's a really good entry point for new investors that may need to find something in like the under 400 range. And so what our agent told us is when you get to houses that are above 650,000, it becomes a little bit less competitive. But now I think all of our empire builders and all these people that do have that ability to really come in at that larger price point are coming to buy these really nice, like almost luxury cabins with pools, cabins that can accommodate larger groups, these new builds that are coming in with beautiful furnishings and arcades and all sorts of really just fun things for families. So it's really exciting just to kind of be part of this group and feel this really excited energy, and see where it takes us.
Yeah. And it's really cool because, every property we've gotten so far, except the new build rate, it has been on the MLS, right? These are properties that we're finding on Redfin and Zillow or Realtor.com. I mean, this is not, having that crazy funnel that you're only talking to wholesalers or anything like that. This is just us like on what's available to everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing too, right? I mean, the deals are out there, and that's the beautiful thing about real estate. And this is where the mindset piece is so important, right? You really have to embrace sort of this abundance mindset, right? Because there's plenty out there for everybody, right? Because I'm pretty sure that an astute investor can make a lot of money from our long-term rental in Spokane. It was just not the right time for us, honestly, and not the way that we wanted to deploy our capital. Because honestly, we were thinking of maybe doing the 1031 for the new build, but they didn't allow it. So we were like, well, eventually we're going to sell this property. Hopefully we'll find something to purchase it with. And, I had, because the stock market was so nice to us last year, and I kept investing, I sold my taxable account so we could put a, deposit on this other property, because I know that strategy is going to work for us long term. Very similar to the strategy that you talked about on your podcast, where you're talking about forced savings. I mean, this is exactly what that is in practice. So it's wonderful for us to actually see it in action.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I was literally going to point out how many people find their own deals because they're looking at Redfin every single day, and because they can recognize a good deal. Once you've done that kind of background work, you have the knowledge of the market. When you see that deal pop up, immediately it's a good deal, and you can take action right away, and you can do that. And that is amazing.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and I also wanted to point out that I know that people are listening to Isabel and saying she got lucky, right? She's so lucky. That's not me. And that's what you mean about scarcity versus abundance, right? Is that the scarcity mindset is like, that's not for me. That, Isabel, she got lucky, or I can't do what she's doing, right? But I think all of us collectively, we all believe that yes, you can do it. And I love this story, Isabel, because like you said, like I probably would have done exactly what Carlos did, and I probably would have just glossed it over. Letty's the one who's really looking at the listing in detail and carefully, and so I just love that story. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. And lastly, we want to point out that your long-term rental in Spokane actually did pretty well because of market appreciation.
Right.
And now you're able to 1031 it, defer taxes, but take that gain that you have and go buy another property. And it's like a year later.
On the Alabama house, that house had actually been listed for 26 days. So there are things that are sitting. It's really about how you can envision that working. I think people kind of want two things. They want to see it empty when they're looking for short-term rentals. They either want it to be completely empty where they can just go in and put their piece on it right away, or they want it to be already a short-term rental where they're just coming in and getting it set up. And so this one was sort of an in-between, which worked to our favor in that we didn't have other people's listings that we had to deal with or try to manage. We didn't have a property manager already in place that we had to negotiate with. But at the same time, it didn't have the furnishings and things that we really felt comfortable with or that we really wanted to showcase the house. And so it's sort of a little bit hard to envision. But I don't want people to think like, oh, it's just about having your phone on all the time and swiping through the listings. Sometimes it's just about seeing what's out there and being able to envision what you might be able to put your touch on to make it really shine and make it a special place.
So given that you're now in 4 different markets, soon to be in 3, what do you guys envision for your journey a year from now, 5 years from now? Where do you want to be?
Yeah, so at least for us, our goal is to have 10 short-term rentals within the next 3 years. And then once we do that, then we'd like to kind of diversify into long-term rentals. I love the concept of long-term rentals, start to finish. I also like the concept of commercial property, etc. But we'll get to that point, just to try to be a little bit more diversified, and also to start kind of scaling back from the amount of work that's necessary for the short-term rentals, and eventually transition to more of the traditional use of property management companies and whatnot. But honestly, I think for us, the real drive to do the property management ourselves is not just because we want to, obviously take full advantage of rep status and tax savings, but also because, no one's going to take care of it as good as we are, right? We're really committed, and we have a clear vision of how we want the place to run, to the point where Isabel, in the short tenure as host, already has super host status, right?
Yay.
Because she's
Nice.
done, she's responsive, she does all these things, really takes care of it, and is on top of everything. So I think our goal, next couple of years, get about 10 short-term rentals. We, in our decor, we kind of have sort of a motif going. And, it's kind of the way we think about it, almost like our brand of hospitality. in terms of how we like to set things up and the service that our guests can expect.
Amazing.
Yeah, and hospitality is definitely a whole other topic that we could discuss for sure for another day.
Yeah.
And so any other closing advice for people considering investing in real estate?
I would just say go for it. Just crunch the numbers, listen to your gut and your intuition, but also try not to get too emotional and do what financially makes sense. I think sometimes when you're moving from a place where you may have only looked at real estate for your personal home, it's hard to switch your brain and to not think about how things are pretty and if you want to live there, because when you're buying real estate for investing, it's not about you, it's about how you're going to try to get somebody else to want to live there. So that was a little bit of a mindset shift, but I think people can definitely do it and just keep it up and know practicing as well. That's a really good thing, is practicing running the numbers and figuring out how things will make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the only thing I'd add to that is, for all of us that are in healthcare, right? We've already had to do so many other things that are much, much harder, like going through medical school and going through residency. I mean, I think everybody in this community, honestly, everybody's an overachiever, kind of by definition, and in our case, we're not the exception, right? So learning about real estate is just like learning about another surgical technique, about another disease, about another treatment, right? And you educate yourself. There's wonderful resources out there. You guys are wonderful teachers, and you provide a lot of really great content that's very easily digestible, even for a surgeon, right? I'd like to echo again what Isabel said. Just go for it. Just like in everything else in life, you never have all the information. You just have you try to get the information that you need to make the decision, and make the decision on time. So that way you take action, and it's amazing where life will take you.
Thank you both for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.